Everyone thinks this is just cute pajamas, but this polar bear sweatshirt has a hidden rule that completely changes how you see Mira's character. Ready for this? It only appears when her emotional walls are completely down. And when you see the 3 specific moments she wears it, you'll understand the genius psychology behind this design choice. Because this isn't just clothing, it's a roadmap to healing from family trauma through chosen family. And if you've ever been the black sheep of your family, this is gonna hit different. Let me show you something. Mira fights demons, performs on stage, does interviews, but she never, ever wears this polar bear sweatshirt during any of that. Not once. You know when it appears? Only in 3 very specific types of moments. This sweatshirt is officially described as loungewear and pajamas, meaning it's what you wear when you're not performing for anyone, when you don't have to be on. And for someone who grew up as the family black sheep, that distinction is everything. The polar bear isn't random either. These creatures survive alone in the harshest environments on Earth by developing thick protective layers. Sound familiar? Mira developed her own thick skin, sarcasm, independence, that I don't need anyone attitude. That's her psychological survival mechanism. What we're looking at here is what I call the armored heart. Someone whose greatest strength is also their greatest prison. The same walls that protected her as a kid are now keeping out the love she desperately needs. But the sweatshirt? It only appears when those walls come down. So let's examine the pattern. First scene, they're back home after a huge fight with demons. They're bandaged, exhausted, watching their world literally fall apart due to hype popularity of the boy band. But look, there's the polar bear, because even when everything is going wrong, she feels safe enough with these two to just exist. But here's what makes this brilliant. Even in this vulnerable moment, she immediately shifts into protective mode. We have to crush that stage, be better than we've ever been. See what's happening? The polar bear represents both sides of her nature, the vulnerability and the fierce protection. Because polar bears aren't just tough survivors, mother polar bears are some of the most protective creatures on the planet. They'll fight anything to protect their cubs. And that protective instinct, that's exactly who Mira becomes with her found family. The white color isn't accidental either. It represents both winter, that emotional isolation she survived, and new beginnings. This sweatshirt is literally her journey from cold survival to warm belonging, worn on her chest like a badge of healing. Scene 2 gets even more personal. Mira comes to Rumi's room for a private heart-to-heart. She's worried, she's being emotionally honest, she's trying to connect. And there's that polar bear again. Listen to what she says. "I'm kind of an expert at reading people, and I just can't shake this feeling that you're keeping something from me." This is Mira being vulnerable, admitting she's worried, asking for emotional honesty from someone she cares about. But then, and this is brilliant, she ends the conversation by saying, "I can't wait until every demon is destroyed and sent back to suffer for eternity." She's talking about eternal suffering while wearing a cute, soft polar bear. The contrast is doing all the storytelling. The grumpy bear face on her chest is like her wearing her wounds as a badge of honor. She's saying, yes, I'm a little grumpy, yes, I've been hurt, but I'm working through it with people who actually love me for who I am. The third scene is the most powerful of all. All 3 girls are sharing their deepest fears and insecurities. And guess what Mira is wearing? The polar bear, of course. Listen to her exact words. "I know our faults and fears must never be seen, but look, I'm kind of a difficult person. Overly blunt, short-fused, highly aggressive. My whole life, those things were a liability. But somehow, with you guys, they're okay." This is the core of her character arc right here. She's admitting that everything her family probably criticized her for, being difficult, being aggressive, is actually okay with her chosen family. They don't just tolerate these traits, they value them. And that's what researcher Brené Brown calls our greatest measure of courage. Not fighting demons with weapons, but being vulnerable with the people who matter most. True strength isn't about being invulnerable, it's about having the courage to let the right people see your wounds. What makes this design choice genius is how it shows Mira's healing process. Every time we see this sweatshirt, she's practicing something that was probably impossible in her original family. She's practicing trust. Polar bears can adapt to harsh environments, but they also know when it's safe to rest, when it's safe to let their guard down. That's exactly what Mira is learning. She doesn't have to survive alone anymore. She found her pack, two people who think her difficult traits are actually strengths. In that final vulnerable moment, she literally says, "With you guys, they're okay." She's not changing who she is. She's finally found people who love who she is. The polar bear represents that entire journey from, "I have to survive alone," to, "I can be myself here." The fact that she only wears it in these intimate, safe moments, that's not just character design, that's showing us what healing actually looks like. It's messy, it's gradual, and it happens in pajamas with people who've earned your trust. So this cute polar bear sweatshirt is actually doing something incredible. It's showing us that the girl who survived emotional winter by building walls has found her warm place to land. It tells us she's learned the difference between performing strength and actually feeling safe. Every time you see that grumpy little polar bear, you're seeing Mira's whole story. The survival skills she developed, the protective love she gives, and the healing that happens when someone finally says, "Your difficult traits, they're not liabilities here, they're gifts." And that's not just character design, that's hope for anyone who's ever felt like the black sheep, anyone who's had to build walls to survive, anyone who's still learning to trust people with their real self. Mira's polar bear sweatshirt is for you. Let me know in the comments what other subtle character details you've noticed in this movie, and if this analysis changed how you see Mira's journey, hit that like button because apparently I have feelings about animated pajamas now.